In class, we discussed that the labor force is equal to the employed plus the unemployed seeking work. And here you can see the diagram of how we both calculate and how we understand the labor force. Okay, so the first thing about the labor force is that it has several names. It is called the workforce, working population, economically active, and it is influenced by the total population, age structure, working age, and labor force participation rate. Okay, so the ways to improve the quality of work of the labor force is to encourage education, is to increase female labor participation, and raising the retirement age. So increasing females, that just means increasing the number of females who are working. Because internationally, traditionally, women compared to men are not working at the same rate. Raising the retirement age is something different, and it's about making sure that people work longer than they would normally. So for example, I am this retirement age. I am 33 years old. I'm expected to retire at 68 years. However, if I retire at 34, that leaves 68 minus 34, 30 additional years that I could have worked. So if they raise the retirement age from 34 to say 68, I will be in the workforce the labor force for another 30 years. So that's why raising the retirement age is important. Okay. Another thing more critical than raising the retirement age. So here we have improved education, and we also have our improved training. Education and training improves the quality of the labor force. But again, one of the ways important for economics is we have to figure out how to calculate labor force. One of the ways that they do it is they look at this employed and unemployment seeking work. Now, the unemployed also typically have something called unemployment insurance. Unemployment insurance allows unemployed people to be working. For example, say that I'm working at a job. I'm working. I'm working. And then all of a sudden, I get down here and I'm fired right here. Unemployment insurance allows me to collect salary between these times until I can find another job. You see? This period here, I'm collecting unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits can be measured as such. So, for example, I make $4,000 a month. Part of my salary goes into unemployment insurance. Then I get fired. So all of a sudden, I get paid $2,500 a month per month. I'm not working. I'm collecting unemployment benefits. This word here. I'm collecting unemployment benefits. If you can't see this, go to the website and download the chapter 9 that I have there under formative exam. So it's formative exam. Grade 12. Okay, really easy. Or the CD that comes with this video. So anyway, so I work for $4,000 a month. I earn $4,000 per month. Then all of a sudden I'm fired. The unemployment benefits pays me $2,500 per month until I can find a new job. I'm not working. I'm actively looking for work. Okay, so while I'm receiving this $2,500, I'm actively looking for work. That's the key. And one of the ways that economists can count unemployment is just simply do the claimant account. focus on the claimant account, claimant count. Basically, we just count the number of people who are, that one's receiving unemployment benefits, this one's receiving unemployment benefits, this one's receiving unemployment benefits, this one receiving unemployment benefits, then that one, and so on. We just count the number of people who are receiving unemployment benefits because they lost their jobs. Okay, that is one way that we help calculate the labor force. We just calculate the number of people who are unemployed, seeking work, and receiving unemployment benefits. It's called the claimant account. Okay. Now, once we account for the claimant account, that is one way. That is one way to measure how many people are unemployed and actively seeking work. We just calculate the claimant account. The second way that we could calculate the labor force is to look at the employed. Okay? And what we do here is, instead of doing, this is the claimant account, we do what is called the labor force survey. So we send out a survey for people who are working. For people working, okay? We found out information, type of job, how many hours they work, okay? How many hours. So these are the two ways that the measures of measuring unemployment. We interview people who are working, and we interview people who are receiving unemployment benefits. Okay, so all right. So the labor force survey, we're interviewing people. Again, we're interviewing people who are employed. One of the advantages is more inclusive than the claimant account. More inclusive meaning we get more information because we're asking about type of job, what they're doing, how long they work there. So it gives more useful international comparisons between countries. But the disadvantage is it takes time to ask all these different questions. It's expensive, and maybe it's sampling errors. Maybe it wasn't collected correctly. So you're literally going out to people's jobs and you're interviewing them. So maybe they weren't there that day. We got sampling errors. We got different problems. So that is how the labor force survey may have some problems. The claimant account, its advantages is quick because once you receive an unemployment check, you're a claimant. You're in the claimant account, and it's easy to calculate. But the disadvantage is always inaccurate. It may not be accurate at all times because sometimes people get unemployment check and not really looking for work. They're just kind of taking a vacation somehow. But it's not, and it's also not very useful for international purposes. So the other problem with the claimant account is that it doesn't count for discouraged workers, partners of the unemployed, and those in training schemes. So they're just out of work, getting some training, if they're not receiving employment benefits. So these are the ways that we do it, that we measure unemployment. But they have some setbacks. So even this, labor force plus employment plus unemployment, it doesn't count for discouraged workers who are neither employed, not employed, and they're not seeking work. So they don't count towards the labor force. So yes, so this is the basic measure that we use to measure unemployment. But it has some setbacks, and it has its pluses and it has its minuses. So in the end, the unemployment rate is equal to the number is equal to the unemployed divided by the employed plus unemployed. That is how we define the unemployment rate. Okay. So now we're moving on to the next thing, which is called price indices. Price indices. What price indices do is it allows us to track how much inflation is going on in an economy. So from the last slide, we were talking about unemployment. This time, we're talking about inflation. So there are three goals that I need you to know that governments want. Goals. Three main goals of government, of countries. Goal number one. Goal number one, stable prices. Goal number two, unemployment. They want people working and producing in a society. And goal number three, growth, GDP growth. Okay, these are the main three goals of a country. Okay, in this section, what we have is we concentrate on the first goal, the stability of prices. Because when prices become unstable, that means we have this bad word called inflation. Inflation means that at each given price, it costs more to get the same goods as before inflation. So inflation is bad. Okay, so unstable prices leads to inflation. So that's what we're talking about in this section here. This is the situation. Suppose that a country A, is reporting a increase in aggregate demand from 81 to 82. The question is real GDP. The question is this growth? Is this growth or inflation? Okay. This is the main question that we got to ask when we see growth in aggregate demand from here to here. Because if it's just inflation, it's not sustainable, and eventually the growth will pop and the aggregate demand will shift way back down very quickly and it'll be a recession. Okay, so we want to know, is this growth or is this inflation? To be more specific, we have two different things that determine aggregate demand. We have price, and quantity. Okay, so is this growth because of increases in price, which means inflation, or increases in quantity, which is growth? Our goal as a country is to increase growth and to decrease inflation. Inflation is bad. We don't want a high inflation rate. Okay? So that's what this section is about. Okay. So the goal is we want to see, is this growth? We're looking here and we can see that the aggregate demand is shifted from AD to 81. Is this growth or inflation? So there are two methodologies to calculate, to measure to see if it's growth or inflation. The first method is the GDP deflator, and the second method 2, is CPI. So the GDP deflator, if you look here, if you look at these two, the GDP deflator looks at the entire economy. Entire economy. Okay. The CPI is 600 goods within the economy. Okay. That is the difference between GDP deflator and CPI. GDP deflator looks at the entire economy. This is the aggregate demand and aggregate supply equilibrium for the entire economy. The GDP deflator looks at that entire economy. The CPI looks at the same economy, but it doesn't look at the entire picture. It looks at just 600 goods and services. Okay, so to calculate the GDP deflator, we first need the nominal GDP, and real GDP. Okay? To get these two, nominal and real, the first thing that we do, the nominal GDP is at each year. This is 2000, this is 2010. The nominal GDP is the nominal GDP at that specific year. Okay? Not accounting for inflation. So we're looking at each year. We need nominal GDP divided by real GDP to calculate the GDP deflator. Now the nominal GDP, this nominal GDP is equal to the real GDP at each year. 4 times 20 gives us 80. That's the real GDP, the GDP of that specific year. The real GDP of this year, the real GDP looks at 2000 as the base year. So real GDP will always use the price, 2000 price, for every year that it calculates. So the real GDP in 2000 is the 2000 price times 20, which is 80, right? And the real GDP in 2010, this year, is the 2000 price, this one, this here, times 25. It'll always use the base year to get 100. Okay? So the point is, now that we have this calculation, we see that GDP is growing from 80 to 100. GDP is growing. The question is, how much because of increase in price or inflation. Okay, so here we can see that the price didn't change between 2000 and 2010. So the real GDP didn't change. So that means that between 2000 and 2010, there was growth, 80 to 100, and 100% of that was due to changes in quantity. The quantity has went up. Price remains fixed. Okay, so now let's change this slightly. Let's say that the price increased to 5. Okay, now we have to calculate the nominal GDP. We have 4. This 4 times 20 is 80. Easy. Now that's for 2000. Now for 2010, the nominal GDP is 5 times 25, which is 125. Okay? So now it gets tricky with the real GDP. So the real GDP in 2000, remember, we're only going to use the base year. This is the base year price, which is 2000, the first year, the base year. So 4 times 20 is 80, plus 4, we use this because it's the base year, times 25 is 100. Okay? So we have that. Now we can see that, yes, growth has increased. Right? Now, if we calculate the GDP deflator, we can see that, yes, there has been growth, but we have to change this number here to 125 over 100 times 100, which gives us 125. Okay, so if we compare the real GDP and the nominal GDP, if we compare the GDP deflator of 2000 and GDP of 2010, we can see that the difference is 25%. So that means, yes, growth. But because of a 25% increase in price. Inflation. Good. So the first way to calculate inflation to see if growth is because of inflation or just quantity is to use the GDP deflator like in the previous example. The second way is to use the CPI. Now, the CPI is really about just collecting information on 600 goods and services. Okay, so in this example, we will only use 3 because I don't have space for 600 all the way down here. Okay, I just don't have the space, so we'll just use 3. Okay, so in these 3 goods, I use bread, sugar, and pens. Okay, now in 2000, the cost of bread is 200 tenge. Sugar is 150 tenge, and pens is 100. Now, in 2010, the price of bread is 300 tenge, sugar is 250 tenge, and pens goes up to 200. Obviously, you can see that the price of these goods have gone up. Now, the CPI, what it does is it calculates the exact percentage. The first thing that we do is we add these together. 200, 150, and 100 is 350. This one, 3, 2, 2, that is 750. Now, to calculate exactly how much this has increased, we calculate a base year CPI, which is equal to 350 divided by 350 times 100, which is 100. And then we calculate a CPI for 2010, using this year, the base year, as its comparison. So 750 divided by 350 times 100. Okay?